Just have 1 hour's worth of carving into this top. The only tools I've used to cut the contour into it are these two little finger planes. This is the one I do most of the work with. That's the small one, and this is the big one, and it's not very big either, if you can tell by my fingers there. But I do most of the work with the tiny one because it's easier to push, just to be perfectly honest with you. And take a look at all the shavings here, and this is just one, like I said, 1 hour's worth of carving. So you can see there's just quite a pile of shavings here. So in effect, what I'm doing is I'm just doing this literally thousands of times. This side here has been lightly scraped. This side here is still from the carving. And so I'm just thought I'd show you my technique for smoothing the instrument out. I don't use sandpaper, at least not very much. Right before I finish it, I might use a little bit of sandpaper on it. But really, I'm just using a scraper. The scraper is very, 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 very sharp, and then I take a burnishing tool and I burnish the edge of the scraper over so it makes a little tiny sharp hook. And that's what I'm pulling across here to smooth out the wood. And so your scraper becomes a combination shaping tool and smoothing tool. You can actually shape the wood with the scraper also. That's all there is to it. Just hours and hours of scraping. I've turned the piece over and I'm working on the inside of the top now. I just started. You can see a few curls here that I've already curled off. And it's just a long, drawn out process. Lots of wood to remove. You don't have to be too careful at this point other than not to hit the edges. You just don't cut the edges, leave them flat. Otherwise, you're just hogging out wood. I have my dial calipers handy here, this little jig that I made to hold the dial caliper, and I can check my depth as I get close to it, but I'm nowhere near close to it yet, so I don't have to worry about that right now. Okay, you can see I've got quite a pile of shavings from the inside of the top here. Been carving on it for about 15 minutes, I'd say, and you can start to see the bowl in the top now. I think you can see it. And the bowl this way too. I'm still very thick, just giving myself an idea here how thick I am in the center. Right now I'm still 370 thousandths, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of 3/8, I believe, thick. I'm not too great with the math, so don't get on me about the math. Anyway, I know I'm way thick, let's just say it that way. And the edges are starting to feel better, but they're still thick too. I can almost tell by just feel how thick I am after doing this so long. You know, I can also feel symmetry. I can tell where I'm thick and thin by just rubbing my fingers around the sweet spot on the tops. And it doesn't take much. I'm not going to take a whole lot more out of these edges right now until I get the bowl more dished out. I took apart a Loar many years ago and I measured it in thousands of inches all over, and basically I carved mine to replicate those dimensions pretty darn close. I also tap on it. I don't know if you can hear it yet, but this is already starting to make a pretty good note. Pretty nice note already. I don't know if that'll come through on the video or not, but it has sustain already too. I can hit the note and then last about a second before it goes away. So anyway, we're just going to keep hollowing it out. I'll show you here a little bit. You can kind of see how hollow it is now. It's getting pretty hollow, but it needs quite a bit more. I think you can see there's a considerable bow there now. And so what I look for is symmetry, to make sure that the bow is fairly symmetrical. Like I can see it's flatter on this side, so I need to work on that a little bit. And we're still way rough, so don't, you know, there's nothing critical yet on the thickness or anything like that. I've been checking it every once in a while just to make sure that I'm plenty thick, and I still am. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch over to my toothed plane and my little plane, and I'm basically just going to smooth it out really good. And then I'm going to carefully measure and take some very accurate measurements from the lower top and write those measurements on here, so I'll know how many thousandths of an inch I am still thick. Okay, I have spent another, I don't know, probably a total of an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours. I doubt it's been 2 hours. Carving the whole inside, and it's really getting close. It's pretty symmetrical. I don't see anything that's out of place. Now I'm scraping the inside just to get it a little bit more level, to get rid of some of the little grooves that the tooth plane leaves in. And I'm not trying to do a perfect job right now. I'm just trying to get it pretty level so that I can do some pretty accurate measuring. I'm using very light strokes and quick strokes, and keeping it moving. That's another thing. You got to keep it moving so that you can feel that. And I've got my fingers against the top, barely letting the blade come down and touch. That gives me a gauge on how hard I'm pressing too. So my fingers are actually rubbing on the top as I do this. Kind of hard to believe that this pile of shavings, which this is not all of it that came out of the inside. It's all over the floor, it's everywhere scattered here, but right now I just grabbed this up. It's hard to believe that this pile of shavings was inside this. It doesn't look like it would fit. Anyway, I got it down to pretty smooth on the inside. Now is the time you want to be sure that you're satisfied with your outside. I've still got thousandths of inches to go yet, but you can still adjust the outside as easily as you can adjust the inside. And I'm still trying to feel the outside. You know, you don't get another chance after you get the final dimensions going here, so trying to just, if I feel anything at all, get right down to the nitty-gritty. And I'm just barely taking off any kind of shaving at all at this point. It's just so minute, it's really hard to explain. I don't think you can measure it. For the last 20 minutes or so, all I've been doing is using the scraper on the inside, smoothing it out. I'm very, very, very close to all my measurements. What I'm doing now is I'm just running the whole top around through the thickness gauge here, and I'm checking to make sure that I don't have any real crazy high spots. Like right here, there's a spot that's higher than the numbers on either side. So obviously it's too thick right here. So I need to smooth that out, and I do that with the scraper. Now it's not crazy high or anything. I mean, it's just a little bit high. And that's just how I blend it. Blend the numbers. I like to see that needle move very slowly and gradually as I'm going across here. It just changes nice and smooth. You don't see any big jerks in the needle. If the needle is jerking, well then you got problems. In the spirit of trying to help you out a little bit, in case you are building your own mandolin, keep in mind this is Adirondack red spruce, and the weight of this is 4.5 ounces. Put it in grams. It's 128 grams right now, and it's pretty close to being finished, so it's not going to change much at this point. I just thought I'd let you know what the weight is. I have my braces marked where they go in my template here, so I just pencil that in. Again, these were taken right off of the Loar, so I know exactly where they went. Okay, I'm going to scribe the lines on these braces to match the top. I have a ballpoint pen cartridge jammed through this little block of wood, and it's better not to have too much of that pen exposed, just a little tip of the pen sticking out. And then it rides on the top like so and marks the curve. Now what I do is I just take a bandsaw and I saw that line and just barely leave the line, and then we see how it fits, and then we just make it fit perfectly from that point on. After I cut the line on the bandsaw, so now you can see that it's curved to match the inside of the top, I lay it carefully in place and I look at it through I turn it up sideways like this and look through it and see where there's holes. I just take and knock off the high spots from the other areas, rough spots, rough sawed marks. Very lightly do that and just keep working it back and forth, testing it. I try to get it where it's just about as perfect a fit as you can get. It just takes time, and then sometimes I'll put some sandpaper in there and sand it like that a little bit. Whatever it takes to get it just right. Okay, you can see that I have the braces installed and clamped in place. Now they're not nearly carved to shape or anything, but I did make them pretty thin. The treble bar is a little thinner than the bass bar, and they fit the contour like a glove. You can't really see any daylight through them at all. These clamps are not clamping as hard as you would think, and I have leather pads underneath the clamp on the top there so it doesn't deform the top. I just barely have them tensioned down enough just so that I know there's no flexing going on in the top and moving away from the brace or anything like that. Just the two end clamps really squeezed out glue all the way across the clamp, so that tells me that it was a good fit. Thought I'd show you that I have the braces carved to the Loar specs, and I have also penciled in the F-holes on the inside where I'm going to glue in the fabric that's going to reinforce the sound holes, and so the F-holes. And that's on the original Loar also, is that they had fabric glued around this, and I figure if it's good enough for a Loar, it's good enough for mine. Well, I thought I'd show you what I've done to this point. I thickness sanded it to the starting point first, and I took this little finger plane and I carved all this down just to get this edge straight all the way around here. And I'm about wore out. It kind of does a number on your fingers and your thumb. If you can see my thumb there, the indentation, and my fingers, it really does a job on them. So that's about all I'm going to be able to do for today. That's about probably 2.5 to 3 hours worth of carving, and it actually gets easier from here though. That first bit, getting it down to the level, is the hard part. After that it goes a little easier.